Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth. The last couple of days, MSNBC has been ginning up the Democrats' Black Voter Outreach program. It's that time of year. They've done a number of political ads, news pieces, and when you look at them, the only black people they talk to are the same old pathetic patterns, the same old usual suspects. You see the Congressional Black Immigrant Caucus, such as Representative Torres, who's an immigrant, and Representative Horsford, who's another immigrant. About the only one they spoke with who wasn't an immigrant was Barbara Lee. So out of the 3 black congressional representatives they've talked to in the last few days, 2 of them are immigrants. Go back into the archives on this channel. I listed for you how almost a majority of the Congressional Black Caucus are immigrants or first-generation Americans. And what are the Congressional Black Talkers talking about? They're talking about the debt ceiling. Now, the Democrats had control of the Congress for the last 2 years at least. Why didn't they handle it then? Because they were just too busy trying to do things for every non-black constituency in existence. That's what they spent all their time doing. Now, all of a sudden, they want to pretend as if, this is just some big emergency. They were too busy ignoring Black America. That's what they've been doing. So I don't want to hear anything about the debt ceiling. The only debt I want to hear about is the $16 trillion debt owed to foundational Black Americans. That's the only debt I want to hear about. MSNBC isn't going to talk around that one, and they're not going to talk about it either, except to have Big Bird on to make phony claims about phony progress. And speaking of black immigrants, in the last couple of days, MSNBC has been talking about Biden's judicial appointments. You know what that means. Just another attempt to try to finesse themselves some black female votes. Nancy abuot used to work for the Southern Poverty Law Center. She was their so-called strategic litigation director. Now, when you check her page on the Southern Poverty Law Center's website, you see that her job was to ensure the voting rights of communities of color and other historically disenfranchised groups. Now, we know what voting rights of people of color means. In California, New York, Chicago, and other places, they've made it legal for illegal aliens to vote in those state elections. That's the people of color they're talking about. People who are not citizens being able to vote, because Democrats see them as a political counterlever to the pressure the black grassroots has been putting on white supremacy. And this abuot woman's also trying to ensure the voting rights of other historically disenfranchised groups. Now, I told you a couple of days ago that whenever you hear that phrase, other historically disenfranchised groups, they're not talking about the black community. They use people of color as their catch-all term to pretend that they're lumping us in with everyone else when they're actually excluding us. When they say other disenfranchised groups, that's in reference to the LGBT community. Also, they point out that she was mobbed up with the ACLU and worked on their voting rights project. Has anyone seen the ACLU going to bat for our reparations or to combat all the racially discriminatory policies black people face every day? You had the news get reported the other day that the IRS finally admitted something that black people have known all along, that they audit us far more than anyone else, 5 times as much as white people. Where's the ACLU on that? Or anything else that's a benefit to us. And before I go any further, it's significant that this woman worked for the Southern Poverty Law Center, because on their website, the Southern Poverty Law Center has what they call their extremism files. And one of the groups who they put into this extremism file list is the Nation of Islam. Ridiculous, but that's what they say. So this was now Judge abuot's portfolio when she was at the Southern Poverty Law Center. She was their non-black people of color and LGBT voter outreach director, and before that she did the same for the ACLU in Florida. And this is who Joe Biden put on the federal bench. The Democrats and MSNBC demand that we celebrate this woman getting a promotion when this is only something that benefits her. They elevate 1 or 2 Negroes and then try to tell the rest of us that this is a victory for all black people when it's not. Individual elevation for one self-interested social climber is not a win for black people as a group. It benefits this abuot woman and absolutely no one else. She's spent her entire adult life with her associations, her interests, her priorities, and focus being solely on what's in the benefits of this white political organization, the Democrats, and she's going to work tirelessly to promote their interests and to ignore black people, and then they're going to tell us that this was all a big favor for us. And of course, she wanted to make sure that when she went to Congress to do her confirmation hearings, that she gave the right impression. Blonde, weave, dreadlocks, really? This bunny ruckus look is not hitting it. MSNBC also did a piece on abortion bans in South Carolina. Naturally, they make sure to have a black woman who they talk to. They want black people to be the face of that. And this McLeod woman, she ran as a Democrat for governor of South Carolina last year. And lost, obviously. But did you notice that on the MSNBC Chiron, it doesn't have a D beside her name? It has an I, as in independent. Earlier this year, Miss McLeod announced that she was leaving the South Carolina Democratic Party. Now, she was going to stay in the state Senate, but she was leaving the state Democratic Party. The only reason she did that was because she didn't get the kind of backing and support from the Democrats when she ran for governor that she thought she should have gotten. So she decided to go free agent. But looking at the positions that she's taken, it's still in line with the Democrats. I don't know why she resigned. Apparently, she thinks the number one issue facing black people in South Carolina is getting an abortion. On Twitter, she posted an image of herself and 4 other women in the South Carolina State Senate, and you have this light-skinned black woman who's standing behind 3 other white women. All of them are Republicans, by the way, and the caption at the bottom of the image says, "The South Carolina Sister Senators, united and unstoppable." Man, this is some old resurrecting that Gloria Steinem all women are sisters nonsense. What, is this supposed to be some sort of countrified version of AOC's squad? I'm just asking for a friend. Well, judging by State Senator McLeod's new sisters, I guess we can already guess where she stands on the issue of reparations, or anything else of interest to black people. All she's going to do is carve out a political place for herself, basically as a white liberal in all but name. So between this abuot woman and Mia McLeod, we see the steady drumbeat of trying to appeal to black female voters, not by bringing them tangibles, but by bringing them representation. In other words, aspiration and nothing else. Why don't you try to live vicariously through these hand-picked puppets that we put on? They've been giving political positions and some white media exposure, so they think that black people should daydream as if the success, quote-unquote, of these puppets somehow translates to black people as a group. The best that black people can hope for, apparently, is to see some hand-picked Democratic operative who they've groomed for political office for a while now, and she gets to be addressed as state senator, or one of them as a federal judge, and you get to wish that that could be you, living vicariously. That's pathetic. But that's what they're offering. It's an invitation to live on the Democrats' fantasy island, where your dreams never come true. Another segment that MSNBC aired in the last couple of days featured a guy named Brandon Wolf. Now, in case you don't know who he is, he's not a reparations advocate. He's an LGBT activist. When you go to the University of California, Santa Barbara's website, you get to see his resume. And it says, among other things, that he is a frequent face on MSNBC, CNN, and Black News Channel. Black News Channel indeed. Well, if nothing else, young Mr. Wolf needs to update his resume, at least on that last point. Well, I guess it doesn't matter because nobody was watching Black News Channel anyway. But it also says that he was a national surrogate for Senator Elizabeth Warren's presidential campaign and an advisory committee member for President Biden's general election bid. So he was a campaign aide to Elizabeth reparations for what? Warren, and for Jim Crow Joe. This guy is a Democratic shill, full stop. He has done nothing to help black people. And I don't require that he does, but when the white media tries to put him in front of the camera and tell black people we ought to follow him, then I need black people to understand this guy is not talking one word about our interest at all. He was sent simply to get black people to support everybody else's agenda while nobody supports ours. Our issue is one of survival, not mere social acceptance. So since this guy is mobbed up with Elizabeth Warren and Joe Biden, there's absolutely no need to ask where he stands on reparations. Out of sight, out of mind. And we won't even get into the NAACP's travel advisory. Florida is where the Rosewood Massacre took place. Florida has long been a sewer of anti-black racism, though apparently MSNBC wasn't too concerned about it until the last year or so, when the Republicans in Florida started doing things that were attacking the LGBT community. Then all of a sudden it's all hands on deck. And the NAACP has done nothing to stop the Republicans anyway. Being an auxiliary for the DNC may be a good move to get invited to the cheese and croissant circuit, but for black people as a group, it's a waste of time. The black grassroots are making it clear we're not supporting any of these civil rights retreads because they don't support us. Now, this is what MSNBC's been up to the last couple of days. We're heading into another election cycle, so they need to get started early laying the groundwork for schmoozing black voters with a whole bunch of hot air and trying to finesse us into sticking up for everybody else when nobody sticks up for us. This means putting on a bunch of black or biracial people whose interests are either aligned strictly with the Democrats, or in the case of some of them, they're just in it for themselves. And they'll try to brainwash us into thinking that since they're not talking about reparations or anything else of interest to us, well, we might as well go ahead and give up on it because what really matters is the debt ceiling and abortion and LGBT issues. Black issues don't matter at all because you got these hand-picked Negroes on TV at the federal and state levels who are going to the mat for abortion, going to the mat to make sure that the programs the Democrats set up for all these other groups don't get cut during the debt ceiling negotiations, and we're supposed to support that. On a side note, Biden said 2 years ago, as soon as he got into the White House, he was saying that he supported a congressional study on reparations. Put aside the fact that we all know that supporting a study is thousands of miles away from saying that you support cutting a check. He supports the idea of a study. Well, that was 2 years ago. Democrats controlled both houses of Congress when Biden made that empty statement, and they only controlled both houses because of black people. Black voters gave the Democrats control of the U.S. Congress, House and Senate. Black voters put Warnock and Ossoff into the Senate. Check the date on this AP story, February 17th, 2021. That was less than a month after Biden was sworn in. He hadn't even served his first 30 days in office, and he was already making empty talk about reparations studies. Okay, then, for all you black Biden backers out there, whatever became of Biden's pledge to support a reparations study? Whatever happened to that? Democrats controlled both houses of Congress when he made that empty statement, and it was all thanks to black people, so what did the Democrats do to reciprocate? Did they cut us a check? Did they even pass a reparations bill? Did they even debate one? Did they ever get around to that reparations study? Did they even get as far as talking about it? Of course not. Nothing happened. Nothing whatsoever. And it hasn't been mentioned since. Biden mentioned it one time and he was done with it. So all you black Democratic shills out there, this is what your buddy Biden has done for black people. All of his phony promises never turn out to be anything other than hot air. And since your boy Biden didn't do anything for us, what do you think we're going to do for him? This is what MSNBC's been putting on the air in just the last few days. They are going heavy with putting on some black faces on their airwaves to sell the Democrats' agenda because this is manipulation. Just a couple of days ago, you had Brother Tariq's Foundational Black American Expo in Dallas. What members of the Congressional Black Talkers were there? Was Brandon Wolf there? Did Joke Reed or Simone Sanders talk about it? How about Jonathan putting on his cape heart? The expo was about promoting and supporting black businesses, so why did none of them report on that? Where were some of their other perpetual Democratic operatives like Maya Wiley at? Did MSNBC or any of their surrogates even report on it, even for the sake of, say, attacking it? Of course not. They were terrified to even talk about it. They were terrified of what they saw. See, they tried to wish the black grassroots away and it didn't work. So now the idea is to ignore us because that's what white power usually does when it fails to defeat a black person. They just keep doing the same thing, only more of it. It's important to keep tabs on who these people are. When the new voices of black media tell you about these people, we're not just doing it for no reason. I was one of the very first people to point out that Kamala Harris was going to run for the White House years before she actually tried it. 97% of you hadn't even heard of Kamala Harris before I made a video about her. Well, I'm glad that I was the one who got to give you the introduction to her. And when she showed up calling herself running for president, her campaign was DOA before she even ran. She just didn't know it. See, we weren't going to be letting any Democrats get us off code. And speaking of off code, Big Bird is another person to talk about. I told you that the white media would be trying to boost his pathetic profile as a counterweight to what they saw us doing. And they've been trying to keep that clown in front of the cameras as much as they could. Not that it's gotten them very much. And now we see the latest attempt at getting black people to invest in a fight between two groups of anti-black crooks. the Democrats and Republicans. Their actual goal, however, is to demoralize us by making all this noise about irrelevancies like the debt ceiling or things against our interests like abortion. They hope that what we'll look to do is say, well, nobody's talking about reparations or anything tangible for us, so we just need to stop talking about it and we need to just get in line, as Tiffany Cross said, and vote for the Democrats anyway and pray that they'll do something for black people. The left wing of white supremacy wants to try to wait us out. And that's what they're trying to find out. They're trying to find out, is it real this time? Are these guys just basically a one election cycle issue, or is this the new normal? Now, there will be a number of mushy-headed Negroes who actually try to help the bad guys to demoralize us. Remember, Brandon Wolf was a surrogate for the Elizabeth Warren campaign, and he worked with Biden's campaign too. When you see these young operatives like, say, a Brandon Wolf, particularly the ones we see online, remember, these are people who we see posting comments attacking the black grassroots because we're not supporting the Democrats. And they post messages making phony claims about all the things the Democrats have allegedly done for us. These are a bunch of young operatives trying to climb the political ladder, and this is how they make their bones. These are the people who eventually wind up on a white media TV show as a reward for their services. Meanwhile, we voted for the Democrats and got nothing for it, because they told us to. But the only thing more sickening than these operatives are the black people who allowed themselves to be bamboozled. We have to stay on our square. The enemy will resume their tactic of carpet bombing us with lies, so we have to speak the truth and stand on it, and dismiss anyone who tries to discourage us or who attempts to convince us that we might as well go along with the get-along because black people will never force them to go along with our program. Yeah, these are the same folks who said that reparations would never be an issue in a political campaign or even at the state level, that we could never force anyone to talk about that issue either. And, as with everything else they've said, they were wrong. The only real purpose these white media news stations serve is to let us know who's working against us. It lets us know who to watch out for. But what they do is not harmless. Stupidity is pretty much the only disease that doesn't necessarily kill the person carrying it, though it does kill everyone around them. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors. D. Tubman, Michael Clark, Ricardo Deshabert, Latrice Wilson, and Selena Williams. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.